always have to be at least inch and a half longer than what you need it to be. So give an extra length to the invisible zipper always. If you need an 18 inches opening, so get a 20 inch zipper. Okay? So you have that extra length to play with. These zippers that we got in here is a little bit narrow. It's kind of heavier. The tape is heavier. I don't know if the zipper itself is heavier or not, but the tape is heavier, but it's kind of narrower. So that requires a little bit smaller seam. I would say 3/8 seam would do it. But even if you have 1/2 inch seam, you just have to compensate for it. So I make just a 3/8 seam here. Make sure I have enough length. Yeah, so I got extra couple inches at the bottom, which is plenty. Open this up. There are different ways of applying invisible zipper. You've done it yourself before. I know some people that do it with the open seam. They don't stitch the seams together. They do the zippers first and then close the bottom of the seam. I don't. As a matter of fact, I've never done it that way. Might be good. If you have tried it and worked, so that's good. But I usually close the bottom first. And then I go just use invisible zipper foot that you all have and stitch it straight in. Or if you want to be safer, you can just paste it in first and then go and use the invisible zipper foot and stitch it close. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to do with the base stitching first to hold the zipper in, and then I'll go ahead and use the invisible zipper foot to stitch it closer. So let's line up the zippers. Always, if you have 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, look at the zipper stop at the top of the zipper and place it like 1/8 of an inch below that seam allowance that you have. So if this is your notch for your seam allowance, below that 1/8 of an inch, place your zipper stop. Because we want to use the tape at the top of the zipper, the tape alone by itself, just to finish the facing and finish the seam. So I base that in. So if I open my seam at the bottom, I stitch it all the way through. Not all the way through, but right to the bottom of my opening. So this is that's where my opening starts. So I stitch it right maybe a couple inches below that point. I don't go too far down. Let me just show you this. So if this is your opening here, stop the zipper right below. You can see just a little bit of overlap. This closure here, and zipper stitch a little bit lower. Okay. So leave the bottom open. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't stitch it all the way through, because if you have a longer zipper, you don't want to stitch all the way into the seam. That's going to restrict your seam, and the seam is not going to look good. So I pull the zipper up and make the seam flat at the bottom, open it, and obviously the zipper goes flat on top of the zipper. Zipper goes flat on top of the seam. Base the other side accordingly. So this way your zipper is based in, but it's still exposed, obviously, because you didn't use the invisible zipper foot. So now I can go in and stitch it close with the other foot. But before I do that, I'm going to slide the zipper down all the way and even push it all the way down to this section of the zipper, just to get it out of the way. I push it, you can just push it all the way down and grab the slider from here and pull it down. So that way you get it out of the way, so it's not interfering with the bottom of the opening here, zipper. So let me just switch into the invisible. So this kind of a zipper stop that we have here is a little bit chunky, doesn't go through that groove underneath of the zipper foot easily. So you just have to tweak it. It gets caught in there. You just have to tweak it to make sure that you get through without bunging up your zipper fabric. Again, when you're stitching this, don't force it when you get to the bottom here. Don't force it, just stop where the zipper doesn't want to go any farther, or the foot doesn't want to go any farther. Just stop right there. And you either can now rotate this, start stitching from the bottom because you have the option of doing it, or you can start stitching from the top for the other side as well, because you can switch to the other group. So when you're stitching this zipper, try to hold the zippers in a slant, very tiny slant, opposite to the direction of the foot. So that means the center blade of the foot pushes towards the zipper and opens it up. You see, I don't hold it straight, I just slant it a little bit. And now you should be able just to grab your zipper slide and pull it up, if you could. That way. This part you're all done, you know, a little bit. One thing that I know most people do when it comes to the facing, let me just cut my facing according to what I have here so I can show you what's happening. So obviously when you draft your facing, you draft it exactly like the measurement that you have up here, right? At the waist or wherever that is. Let me just cut that off. Which is going to be the same thing for the other side, I would say. I'm going to do both sides. Okay. So pretty much what most people do when it comes to the facing stitch into this, all you do is just put this on top, sandwiching the zipper in between, and you go one shot across the top and going down on the zipper, right? Is that what we do? Or is it snowing? So I'll show you what that's gonna look like. So we said we're gonna stitch it the way it usually gets done. Not in the industry, of course. I'm saying in here, a lot of people do it this way. In the industry, they don't do it this way. So you stitch it across the top, you come right into the zipper, on top of the zipper, and then you go rotate and stitch down. Okay? And then you try to flip it back like this. But the other way of doing this, but that caused some problems. You will see you never get the top corner to be a smooth square. And that spacing here, always you have some kind of tucking going on. So you won't be able to pull it back. And when you pull it back, you have the space at the bottom, but when it gets to the top, it tapers into the zipper. You don't have that space at the top anymore. But the way this gets done is, in the industry, you line up your facing on top of the same way, you line it up, because that matches this. But because of the spacing here that we're going to create with the foot that we have, because when you stitch it, it gives you 1/8 of an inch spacing. Because of that 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to shift my facing out half inch or quarter inch, or depends on the foot, like 3/8 of an inch. Twice as much the spacing that you have. So that gives you this. When you line up the facing. This facing gets done in 2 shots, not 1 shot go all the way around. So the zipper side gets sewn in first, and then we go and finish the top after. So always you do the zipper side first. So that requires, because of the spacing, requires like a quarter inch or 3/8 of an inch to push the facing out, to make the facing shorter. And you will see that by doing that, obviously it's going to be shorter on the side seam, so it's not going to match the side seam, but that's okay. We can leave it at that, and we go back to it and see how that's going to work. So I'm just going to line this up. I stitch the facing and zipper together. Again, you see that my facing is sticking out from the zipper. It's not even, and that makes this side shorter. Okay. So, but I'm going to flip this back and do an under stitching here. So that clears the spacing here all the way through. It gives me that spacing that I need all the way through to the top. Let's do an under stitching. Okay, now to sew the top, you need to fold this back, not from where the facing is stitched to, but right beside the zippers. You fold it back. When you fold it back, facing comes on top. The seam also folds with the facing, seam and zipper also fold with the facing over. So that way, your facing and your side seam lines up again. So the facing is not shorter anymore. Only because we created that spacing here. So that gets added to the facing. I don't know how much that makes sense at this point. Hopefully it makes sense when you do it. Just follow this exactly the way we do it. When you do it, it's going to make sense, and watch the video again, and if you have any questions. So when I do this, as I said, facing gets folded over right from the edge of the zipper coil. And zippers also fold over. You can look at it closely after I finish. I'm going to clip that corner on top just to, and when I fold it back or flip it, and press this, obviously, since we don't have pressing equipment here anymore, we won't be able to. So that's how it's going to look like. You can zoom on that. Versus this one here.